Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1399A, and today's date is October 12th, 2017, and the title of the episode is The Economic Downturn is Accelerating. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we are getting so many different mixed messages on the crypto market from the central bankers. And we know that the central bankers, their main objective is to take control. We know that UBS and many of the other banks, they're working together to create a cryptocurrency. The central bank is out there saying, listen, it is a good idea, but we need to control the crypto market. We'll keep it stable. And they're trying to push that agenda. Now, on the other side, there are others who probably are losing a lot of money from the trades where they don't like the crypto market, and they're trying to, push people away or drive the prices down so they can get into the crypto market. I mean, one of those individuals was CEO Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase, where he lashed out at the crypto market, calling it a complete fraud, worse than tulip bulbs. So we see right now that we're getting messages from all over the place, but if we fast forward to today, Jamie Dimon, he won't even talk about the crypto market. And what we've been seeing lately is the crypto market. This is an open and free market. It's decentralized as of right now. And we can see that, yes, Bitcoin and many of the other cryptocurrencies, they are volatile. They move up and down. But this is what a free and open market does. It doesn't just keep moving in one direction, because if something is just moving in one direction, most likely it's manipulated and it's being set up to be a bubble. Now, there is a lot of individuals out there that have no idea what Bitcoin is. They might have heard about it. They might have heard it in passing. They're not really dealing with it. So when people say this is in a bubble, it really isn't. And I do believe that as we move forward, the crypto market will play a role in the currency market in the future. Now, the only question is who is going to control it. Now, we've been following the economy, and we see that there are many, many pieces to the economy, and many of the pieces are starting to fall apart. We see out in Canada, Sears, as we know, they're in a whole lot of trouble, and the whole entire retail market for them is completely imploding. And it looks like Sears Canada, they're going to be liquidating about 150 stores. That's about 12,000 jobs. Now, Canada adds around 12,000 jobs each month. Now, let's think about this for a second here. There's going to be 12,000 jobs that will be lost. That means there's going to be a lot of part-time, full-time people looking for work. Plus, all those stores, all that commercial real estate becomes available right now. It's going to be vacant. And we know that Canada adds around 12,000 people a month. Now, this is going to be a huge problem. Of course, they'll manipulate the numbers somehow. They'll make it look like everything's fine. They'll spread it over time. This is what the U.S. does. And a lot of countries do copy this, and they're going to make it look like it's a lot better than it really is. But we can see just from this is not the only store. We have Toys R Us. We have Gymboree. We have many, many other stores that are in a huge amount of trouble. And as we move forward, there's going to be a lot more stores that are going to be added to the bankrupt stores. Now, we know the automobile industry, they're in a heap of trouble. GM is going to be laying off about 1,500 more workers because right now, as we know, car sales are plunging. Now, they're trying to do whatever they possibly can to get people to purchase cars, and this is why they've been going to the subprime people, to the subprime people. No money down, and remember, when you buy a car, you're really not using your own money, you're just borrowing this money. Now, as we can see, they are cutting production. They're going to be laying off people. A lot of people thinking this is just temporary, but as we're getting word from GM, this is not going to be temporary because what they're saying is that sales are not that great. We might be bringing back a lot fewer people, but we're going to cut production, and we know what happens as time goes on. All of a sudden, they will end up closing the plant because they just can't make the sales. Now, we can see by all these different indicators that the economy is accelerating to the downside. JP Morgan Chase, their net credit card charge-offs remained over $1 billion as of September 30th. And to be precise, this is the highest level going back to March 2013. And we've seen this before. It looks like we're ticking up once again back to the 2010, 2011 area where the charge-offs were very, very high. And this is just another sign that we are in a heap of trouble. Credit card losses in JP Morgan Chase went from 1.3 billion up to 1.5 billion. So we're in trouble here. And this is just another indicator that we have a huge amount of problems. Now, we talk a lot about real estate, and we talked about how the real estate market is not doing well. And the National Association of Realtors polled around 2,000 millennials between the ages of 22 and 35 about student debt and home ownership. Only 20% of those surveyed owned a home. Of the 8 in 10 that didn't own a home, 83% of them said student debt was the reason. 84% said they have to delay home purchases for years because they're just not making the money and they have too much student loan debt. Now that is absolutely awful. And we can see the housing market is really getting hit. But we know, and we talked about this before, there was a home builder called Lennar, and they announced that they would pay a big chunk of the student loan for any borrower buying a home. That means they are desperate at this time because they cannot find people to purchase homes. Now, we need to think about something. Debt has become such a keystone of our society that the only way we can afford something is to swap one type of debt that you can't afford with another type of debt. Now, those people who are just coming out of college, or, they have a job, or they've lost their job, you know what I'm talking about. It is very difficult to go out and purchase a home, purchase a car with cash. And a lot of times when you go to the store, you're using credit. So there was a study by Pew Charitable Trust show that 41% of U.S. households have less than $2,000 in savings. A full one-third have zero savings, including 1 in 10 families with over $100,000 in income. Another study showed that 70% of Americans have less than $4,000 in savings. The point is, America is broke. A single surprise expense like a flat tire or a doctor visit could wipe out most of these individuals. And people who are continually buying homes, cars, TVs, college education, all they're doing is adding to their already existing debt. And they just keep on taking on more debt. They're not making any more money. They have higher payments. And this is the way the central bankers like to have it. They like you to be in debt. This is their whole entire plan. This is what they do. Their product is debt. And they want people to take out more debt. They don't want people to have savings. They don't want people to use cash. They want people to use debt. This is where they make their money. This is where they get their control. Now, there is an inflation storm coming. Now, we talked about this before. When we look at the U.S. dollar has lost around 84% of its purchasing power since 1971. And yet the Fed has claimed that inflation has been subdued or under control throughout that time period. Well, it hasn't. Because what we've been seeing is as the value of the dollar decreases, that means it takes a lot more dollars to pay for those products. And we can see right now that by looking at what has been happening since the 70s, we can see these different indicators that show us that inflation has been a problem and will be a problem as we move forward. Now, with this level of currency depreciation, incomes would have to rise exponentially to compensate for Americans' high cost of living. And they haven't. As a result of this, Americans have increasingly relied on two parents working instead of one, while supplementing their incomes with credit cards and other debt instruments. And this is what we've been seeing over time. And it's getting worse. Now people are losing their high-paying jobs and they're getting these part-time jobs, which makes it even worse. Now, put simply, when we look at all this, whatever the Fed is throwing out there in regards to inflation is pretty much garbage. They purposely want us to believe that inflation doesn't exist because it allows the Fed to overstate GDP growth and paper over the fact that incomes have been on the decline relative to cost of living since the early 70s. And we can see right now that the economy, well, it's accelerating to the downside. We've been looking at all these indicators, and every day we look at something different, and we can see that it is not improving. Yes, they can try to convince us that it's improving. Yes, they can give us manipulated numbers. But when we look at the hard facts and we start looking at each and every one of them, we know there's a problem. I mean, today, if I told you, and let's say we're back in 2008, and I told you the subprime securities are completely garbage because I looked inside of them and they were all defaulting, there's no way they're AAA, most of the people out there would say you're absolutely ridiculous. You have no real proof. You don't know what you're talking about. The rating agencies out there are telling us it's AAA. The government is saying everything is fine. The Fed is saying everything is fine. You don't know what you're talking about. And guess what happened? It turned out to be absolutely true. They were complete garbage. They weren't AAA. People were defaulting, and all the rating agencies, the Fed, the government, they didn't care. They were out there spewing the propaganda that everything was fantastic. Here we are looking at the same exact thing. We're saying the same exact thing, not just at subprime securities. We're looking at the housing market. Why are there problems? What have they done to convince us that housing is doing a lot better than it really is? We're looking at the automobile industry. What have they done to make us convinced that it's doing a lot better than it really is? Remember channel stuffing? Remember sales, how it's all done? Same thing with retail. You know, when a store goes out of business and they close up shop, they don't just go and say, okay, all those sales just stopped. They take what they've had and they spread it over the rest of the year to make it seem like it's a lot better than it really is. So we're doing the same thing. And it's very hard for people to believe this because the corporate media, because the Fed, the government, is telling them something completely different. But when things start to fall apart, you'll start to realize, holy moly, that was true. Just like the subprime securities, there were a few individuals that knew it was true. They knew it was going to crash. They didn't know when. They put a bet that it was going to crash. People yelled at them. They laughed at them, saying, we'll take your money. But what happened? In the end, they were right. The corporate media, the people in these financial institutions, the Fed, the government, all wrong. The same thing's happening right now. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.